What's up, guys? Yugi Bros here. Today I wanted to bring you guys my rough draft tier lists for the meta of Speed Duel's post-attack from the deep. I figured we'd actually break it down into 5 different tiers, starting with tier 1 through tier 3, and we're using the 0.5s in between. I want to stay away from tier 0 or tier 0.5 because I don't feel like anything in the format is too over ridiculous. Like, tier 1 is usually normal. Tier 0 is usually defined for more decks that are just outlandishly the best. Everyone is playing it, like something like Necroz in its height of its time or whatever, or Return Dad or something like that, where you just literally couldn't win with almost anything else. Yeah, you could steal a game or two, but you won't win the match. Like, just automatic. So, we're in a much safer format where I've noticed there's a lot more diversity in between the decks. So I wanted to go ahead and give you guys my tier list, rough draft at least, for tier 1 through tier 3, starting with the basics. So the first deck I have on the tier 1 list is Relinquished. I don't think this comes to anyone's surprise. This deck obviously got a lot of support recently, and it's definitely been a lot more powerful going into this format. I think between Sonic Bird, being able to search, just obviously fixed the searching capabilities that the deck had. The problem it had before was getting the spell card, but no longer is that an issue. The Jhin, if you do use it, I understand, to my understanding, a lot of people aren't using it because they're playing ready for intercepting in the main, because if it's either not good in the situation against your opponent, you can, or just you want to use it on your monster, you can flip your Relinquish face down with it and flip it back up to get a different equip the following turn. And that's very, very handy in itself. So I understand the people not playing the Jhin for that reason. I'd still probably side it going into a specific matchup, but I do understand the logic behind it. And then obviously this deck also got Fulfillment of the Contract. Granted, I understand no one's really playing that. I understand that logic as well. It's very dead early game. It's very situational late game, paying 800 life points. And we have cards like Zombina and other things that can bring it back anyway, so it's not like it's absolutely necessary. But this definitely performs very well, very consistent, and gives it the first spot in my tier 1 list going forward. In the number 2 section of the tier 1 list, I have Gravekeepers. Now, I understand this might come as a shock. For a while, I had this at tier 1.5. However, I feel like this deck is heavily underrated. I know a lot of people were kind of down on this, like it can't keep up with the current decks in the game, and either Relinquish or Blue Eyes will just wreck it, but I feel like Gravekeepers is enough of a small engine that you can then fit the rest of the deck with traps and spells as you please, making it so that you have better matchups against everything in the main deck, and then the side is just an extension of however you're planning on playing against a specific deck. The way I see it with this deck is, first of all, Oracle is a force to be reckoned with in itself, and that does a lot of damage. But second of all, you get a lot of manipulation through the fact that your engine consists of 3 searchers, 1 to 2 to 3 other Gravekeepers, and an Oracle or 2. That gives you a lot of room to work with for other decks, for other matchups, for other specific things you want to play. And what clinched this to the tier 1 spot was the German Nationals actually first place winning with this deck. I understand it was accompanied by the It's My Lucky Day skill and 2 Dice Foons to basically act as a Twin Twister without a discard, or a Raigeki through Time Wizard in the side deck. But I definitely think it was the deck, it was on the back of Gravekeepers, and that little luck-based flip or roll there has nothing on the actual deck and its contents in itself. So I definitely would put this up there. There's actually a player at my locals that plays this deck very well, and I definitely think this deck can give Relinquish and Blue Eyes a run for their money in the right specific matchup. So definitely don't count this deck out yet. I know this is a rough draft, but obviously we'll see where this goes moving forward. And to nobody's surprise, I have Blue Eyes in slot number 3 for the tier 1 list. I just feel like the capability to wipe out your opponent turn 1 is too good to be true in most situations to not play. And always, the fact, it was always good. It was always the second best last format, but now it has more main decked or side decked options to play against something like Amazon's, which was its main source of trouble beforehand between Warrior Elimination and Ready for Intercepting, among other things. So I definitely think this deck is the deck to play. moving forward, it does hinder on the back of Flute of Summoning Dragon, and if somebody plays like Magic Jammer to stop that play, you might be stuck for a bit. Gravekeepers have the ability to main that card because they have so much space, as well as Ready for Intercepting, which is actually a problem if they activate that on your Lord of D. When you activate Flute and Lord gets flipped face down, Flute does not resolve because Lord of D is not there for it to resolve its effect. So that's also a very good card against this matchup as well to slow it down. But a lot of people are fixing this by playing dragons like Twin-Headed Behemoths, sometimes Spirit Ryu even, as a normal summonable dragon so that they can Stamping Destruction the problems before they summon their big guys through Lord of D and Flute. So definitely top contender for sure. I know a lot of people want me to say Amazons as well, or Amazon Mishmash, but I'm going to get to the tier 1.5 list to explain my thoughts on those. So, while I know I'll probably get flack for this, I think this deck is more tier 1.5 currently. I don't think it's tier 1. I think it definitely can be, but it's got this everlasting problem now of dealing with Warrior Elimination and Ready for Intercepting being played in literally anything. Ready for Intercepting is most of the time in the main deck now. Warrior Elimination can be sided just as a Regeki to blow up all warriors. And I understand Village exists so that you could, in theory, lose all your warriors but get another one. But that makes for an incredibly easier matchup for these decks moving forward. I think there's going to have to be a way to try to utilize this better through either Tribal Synergy or like the third place deck we saw from Nats in Germany. I don't know. I've even messed with that, and I don't think it's up to snuff, unfortunately, but Relinquished is definitely a tougher matchup for this deck now because absorbing all the monsters is a real pain, and Blue Eyes just has a million things it can side, and as I've said, Gravekeepers already have a really good matchup against it. In addition to other things, if Water could ever figure out how to get its Levia consistently on the board turn 1, Yumi can pop the entire field, and this deck's got nothing on that. So even more rogue decks can have a better matchup against this than it used to. So that's why I have it at tier 1.5. It definitely can still pull games for free, and if you abuse Swordswoman enough, you can definitely do so, but I wouldn't put it at the top of this list only because the weaknesses are now so much greater than they used to be. On top of that, I have Harpy, but I mean Harpy Amazon. There is no consistent way to play Harpy right now, unfortunately. So Harpy Amazon with Tribal Synergy. I don't even count Desert Twister anymore. I think it's too slow. They both work really well. Again, gives the deck more draw power, more consistency. But I find it's just got the same weaknesses. Also, the problem with not playing Pure is that you lack the abilities for the heirlooms and the villages to work as well as they can, but the Tribal Synergy is supposed to usually make up for that in its draw power. But I definitely think both of these are like one and the same now. You may have to play one for the other. It may not work with one way anymore, but they both struggle from the same problems as I've already mentioned. And then number 3, as disturbing as an image as this is, I needed a way to branch off the fact that the deck from Germany played the triple Zambina is what they were calling Amazoness control. I would prefer to call it Swordswoman control, as the entire theme of the deck is have Swordswoman do as much damage to your opponent as possible, throw in some Mask of Accurseds to do more damage, and then have Zambina reborn your Swordswoman to do the max amount of damage possible. Again, it's a Swordswoman Amazoness type deck. I think all the Amazoness Mishmash decks are tier 1.5, along with Warrior Beatdown. They called it Warrior Beatdown. I assume this was Amazon stuff. If I'm wrong, please let me know, and I'll try to make it better of what that entailed. I assume Blade Knight was included, but any type of Warrior Mishmash with Amazon Swordswoman, I think this deck has potential. I tested it a lot last night. It seemed okay. It didn't seem as fantastic as I originally thought it did, and on paper it looks like it's a godsend, but it's a cool theme. It's a definitely creepy looking image here to use as the way to depict this deck, but this deck, it's cool. It's got potential. You just abuse it as much as possible, but I don't think it comes quite to tier 1. I don't think it'll give you as much wins as you're expecting it to give you. So, on to tier 2, and I would actually like to widen this to tier 2.5 as well. Both of these tiers are kind of they're like decks that can go off, have the ability to. It's like Konami had an idea, but they don't have the specific things to make them perfect, to make them consistent. I put King of the Skull Servants in Legendary Fisherman at tier 2. I still have yet to see a Fisherman deck, but there were a decent amount of Fisherman decks around German Nats, and I also heard a lot of people were messing with it. And I have Dark Magician Girl mix, because it's kind of like a turbo of Dark Magician Girl, but you play Dark Magician in it. And Levia Dragon Daedalus, this might actually just go with Fisherman. I don't really know where to put it. But in my experience messing with water, it's like they released 2 themes for this deck. They released a Slushy Levia combo, and they released like the Legendary Fisherman package, and they didn't really know where to go with either one of these. So they're both half finished, I guess. And they definitely could be doing that to set it up so that you have to get set 3 to finish your water deck and make your water deck more consistent. Kind of like what they do with the Relinquished and Sonic Bird. I think water has a crap ton amount of potential, and I'm a huge water fan. I used to play, this was one of my first structure decks when I was younger, was the Levia Dragon one. So I definitely am looking forward to this being consistent in speed duels, and who doesn't want to pop the entire field, right? But there's no defense to this deck, and they have this like milling engine between Fishborg and Imaruka and Slushy and stuff, but then there's no defense on that. Like you can mill all the waters you want, but you have to hit the exact amount of what you need, or else it's just bad, or else you're just losing really quickly. And if you were to add defense to it, like Sphere Karibos or something, it makes it so that when you try to mill something, you're now milling Sphere Karibos or more spells and traps, then it just gets in the way of your actual theme. And then Legendary Fisherman, if they gave us the Legendary Fisherman 2, I'd say Catch of the Day would make so much more sense. I think this would be a viable deck. Legendary Fisherman 2 is 2218 Warrior level 5. It says its name becomes Legendary Fisherman while it's on the field or in the graveyard. And while Yumi's on the field, this card is unaffected by other monster effects. That would make it relevant against Relinquish right now and give this deck a real nudge in the format. And then this also says that this face-up card is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect. While it's in its owner's possession, you can add a level 7 water monster from your deck to your hand. That just goes infinitely along adding Levia to your hand. It's like they created both of these decks with the mind of this card literally fits the perfect description of all of the stuff that's in this set for Attack from the Deep, but they gave us the original Legendary Fisherman because they thought maybe it'd be too strong, whereas I don't think it'd be too strong. I think it would have been absolutely perfect. I think Blue Eyes would still give it a run for its money, unless you could summon Levia and blow up the field, but I think this would definitely have fit into this game. This would make Relinquish not as ridiculous as it is. This would be the deck to play against Relinquish, because they couldn't take it with Relinquish, and I think that would make it very strong, but then, it would give Relinquish a reason to main more Spell and Trap hate to get rid of the Yumi, so that then they could take this monster, but it would just make the format a little bit more fair and give us a little more diversity. I've been a huge advocate of a Legendary Ocean, and I think this is what that deck needs moving forward for the field spell, but Legendary Fisherman 2 could have definitely made Catch of the Day a super relevant skill in addition to making water a super relevant deck. I'd probably put it at tier 1.5 or tier 1 depending on how we could mess with that. But unfortunately it's not. So water gets this spot. I kind of feel like all of these decks have the potential, but the ones that I have on tier 2 versus tier 2.5 just have a little bit more potential than the rest. Skull Servant at least has all his zombie support that can make it good. With Viral Infection, you can dump the Skull Servants quickly to get King to get a huge buff early. But you can also you can use Relinquish in this deck and kind of like mishmash. I've been calling it Skullinquished. If anyone wants to see games with that deck, it's a bit slow, and obviously you just play regular Relinquish to have a faster version, but it does give you your Skull Servants quickly. You still play Viral Infection because you can dump these things. And then you get the bonus effect of having a King of the Skull Servants that's pretty big and a Relinquished. You have a beater in Relinquish, so that's really cool. And then Dark Magician's, like, as I've said, kind of the same thing. You can spam Dark Magician Girl all you want, but it's really slow, and it usually takes Magician's Circle, and that usually takes a few turns to set up, and that's usually not going to get you anywhere you need to. I'd probably actually move Dark Magician Girl Turbo down to tier 3, and keep these other 3 at tier 2, but I just wanted to have like a little bit of a diversity between how good this can be versus how bad it also can be before we get to tier 3. So, I mean, they're good, but they're not there yet. So tier 3, I basically just have a bunch of stuff that I could have made more tiers, but this is just stuff that I just know for a fact doesn't work, and no matter what you try to do, it just won't it won't synergize enough for you to make it competitive. They're fun decks basically for now. Hopefully they'll get more support in the future. But basically we have things starting off here with tunes. The deck's just really too slow. Spells and traps, destroy Toon World, you're just dead in the water, everything dies, and it takes forever for you to set up anything. Stuff can't attack the first turn, so it's like playing Magic with a bunch of 0 drops, but they just can't attack. It's just, why would you do that in Yu-Gi-Oh? Then you have something like Red Eyes Wheeler.deck. It spams Meteor Black Dragon, that's cool and all, but like, if you could get it consistently, I'd give it a little bit more, maybe a tier 2.5 spot, but I just don't think it has what it takes to be relevant in the game currently. It's unfortunate because I think the Wheeler.deck stuff has a lot of potential, and, you know, It's My Lucky Day gives you a new dimension as to what you can do with things, but I just don't think... they haven't given Joey enough relevant things to make his stuff consistently, you know, meta-based, if you want to call it that. It's just way too flimsy. The Royal Flush group, I mean, what do you want me to say about this? It's just really, really bad. Like, Royal Flush shouldn't pay 1,000 in a deck that's already very, very slow, and getting out your monsters, just, it's so frustrating to play this. I've tried to play this on numerous occasions. It just does not have what it has going for it, and Jax Knight's not even strong at 1900 as a level 5. But to get the combo to work and stuff, there's no way in hell this survives in a competitive format. I have Gravekeeper's Curse here to represent Burn. Burn was a very, very lackluster idea last format, and the only thing it gained this format was Mask of the Accursed. And while you can slowly but surely whittle your opponent away with Burn, you might as well just play the Amazon control, the Swordswoman control with the Mask instead, and just save yourself the embarrassment of how slow this is and how boring it is to try to burn your opponent only to almost never get it off anyways. And then last we have Robin Zombie here to represent mill decks. They gave us Goblin Zombie, they gave us Robin Zombie, they gave us Zombina to Reborn stuff, but it's abysmally terrible. I tried messing with this. There's like no hope competitively for it. It's cute. Viral Infection's the only way to really play this and not have it legitimately suck, but it's just in a lost causes right now. So that's it for this video, guys. I'm sorry it took a little bit longer than I wanted it to, but I wanted to exemplify as to why I have all of these in the specific spots that I do. I get that tier 2 and 2.5 should probably just be merged to 2, and this should just be 3, and then we should just go, 3 is all the fails, 2 should be the maybes, but probably nots. 1.5s and 1s should be the ones you're going to play if you want to play this meta competitively. But hey, I'm not trying to hate on anyone else's deck. I love playing Water, as terrible as it is. I love playing Wheeler.deck, as terrible as it is. I love the fun decks in this game. I just wanted to give you guys my list on meta specifics. But as always, guys, like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments down below if I missed anything or if you don't agree with any of my decisions. But as always, this is Yu-Gi Bros signing out. Peace.